Hello, hello everyone. So my name is Jonathan. And I will be your host today. As your host, it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on blockchain and smart contracts, a game changer in mediation. Before we begin, let me introduce our esteemed moderator for today, Miss Olga Botenko. She practices with Fanda Partners in Hong Kong. She is an investment and trade lawyer with over 15 years of experience in public international law, investor-state dispute resolution, and commercial arbitration. She has acted as counsel, registrar, and tribunal secretary in numerous investor-state dispute, including under the auspice of the Permanent Court of Arbitration and the ICSID, as well as in commercial arbitration disputes in Asia and beyond in a wide array of industries, including oil and gas, mining, infrastructure, constructions, telecommunications, and pharmaceutical. Ms. Olga Podenko is an adjunct professor at the University of Hong Kong, and she is developing an active arbitrator practice. Ms. Olga Botengo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and thank you to the entire AADR team for organizing the fellowship events. As somebody who has attended and participated in quite a number of AADR fellowship events, I must confess that these events are always very interactive and they always dedicated to groundbreaking topics in alternative dispute resolution industry, ranging from neuroscience behind the tribunal's decision-making process to groundbreaking topics such as today, blockchain technology and its impact on mediation with a little construction adjudication twist at the end. So these events are highly recommended for AAADR fellows to attend and to share their views and experiences on these topics. I'm most delighted today to facilitate, or rather to announce, today's webinar. It's a very rare webinar that's dedicated to smart contracts, blockchain technology, their impact on mediation, and on construction adjudication. And this is a topic that, as you know, for those blockchain enthusiasts who have joined us today, this is a topic that gaining relevance quite rapidly. And nowadays, but it is yet to be covered by academics and practitioners across the industries. So today, we're most fortunate to have three leading experts on our panel who also have the most stellar academic credentials. And I'll have the pleasure of introducing each one of them to you. But before I do so, very brief housekeeping matter on the webinar. Our panel will first deliver the interactive discussion, and the panelists have collaborated quite intensively on creating a joint deck of slides to which they will present, and that will be followed by a discussion of any burning fundamental issues. Then we will open the floor to the audience and to your questions. So do please type up your questions as we go in the Q&A box, and the panelists will then pick up your questions during the Q&A session. We will aim to wrap up at 4 p.m. Kuala Lumpur time. And now, starting with the order of appearance, Dr. Joseph Mante is the principal lecturer and a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. He has extensive practice experience in litigation and dispute resolution generally. He has earned his PhD in construction dispute resolution, and his current research interests include the use of technology in construction and dispute resolution. Until recently, Joseph was the research degrees coordinator and the course leader for the LLM Construction Law and Arbitration Program, which is one of the largest online master degree programs at Robert Gordon University, and has been ranked as one of the leading construction law programs in the world. Joseph will cover blockchain and smart contracts in general, but he will also set the scene for the entire panel. And then, having Joseph done that, Charles will then discuss blockchain technology implication for mediation. Charles is an award-winning scholar. He is quite well known in the region here in Asia, but globally as well. He is a lecturer in law at Robert Gordon University. He's also a PhD candidate in law at the University of Glasgow and a fellow of the Stanford Vienna Transatlantic Technology Law Forum at Stanford Law School, as well as a fellow of the Center for Chinese and Comparative Law at the City University here in Hong Kong, a Leslie Wright Fellow in the Philip K.H. Wong Center for Chinese Law as well. At the University of Hong Kong since 2022, and holds quite a number of honorary fellowship positions, in addition to all of his other academic credentials. Following on from Charles, David will take over and he'll explore the implication for construction adjudication of the blockchain technology. David is the Associate Dean for Academic Development and Student Experience and the Law School at Robert Gordon University. He's based in Aberdeen and joining from there. Good morning, David. David has responsibility for the development and delivery of the school's teaching and learning portfolio. David has quite an interesting professional bio, because before joining the university and enhancing his academic credentials, he was actually a solicitor in private practice in the UK, and where he practiced in predominantly construction disputes and advised on matters in the energy and infrastructure and leisure sectors in all forms of dispute resolution. So he is quite an expert in mediation, litigation, and arbitration, with a particular focus on construction adjudication. In addition to that, David holds quite a number of fellowship positions, and obviously his research focus is in the area of construction law and dispute resolution. And now, having taken all this time to introduce our brilliant panelists, without further ado, Joseph, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Olga, for the wonderful introductions. And also, I want to, on behalf of my colleagues, thank AIADR for inviting us to participate in this very exciting webinar. By way of introduction, our research is premised on two very important developments. The first one is the accelerating technological innovation and development. And the second one is the shifts in dispute resolution paradigm across the world. Going back to the first one on accelerating technological developments, I am sitting in Scotland, 6,573 miles from Kuala Lumpur, and 10,578 kilometers. That's how what the miles translate into. So over 10,000 kilometers. And I'm speaking to you live this morning. Compared to the 1920s, the early 1920s, it would have taken me between 4 to 6 weeks to deliver this message I have delivered this morning to you. And this tells us about how impactful technology has been to our lives. Indeed, even before the 90s, when the World Wide Web became the thing of the world, the same challenges would have been faced in terms of how we communicate. And that simply illustrates how rapidly technology is taking over a lot of the things we do and facilitating them and making them more efficient. On the issue of shifting dispute resolution, we can also say that a lot of the activities that we used to do face-to-face have been shifted online. And that has been facilitated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps the only one of the brighter sides of that pandemic we can refer to. And clearly, as an industry interested in dispute resolution, we need to move with the times. And so these advancements offer an innovative framework for dispute avoidance and more efficient transparent process for resolving conflicts, particularly in the commercial settings. As able moderator Olga said, this presentation is in 3 parts, and I will provide a brief overview of the blockchain technology and smart contracts element of the presentation. I'll look at the potentials of these technologies and also focus on some of the examples of the frameworks that are emerging. My colleagues, David and Charles, will take on specific examples in terms of how the technology has influenced or can influence mediation and also construction adjudication. They're very interesting topic. So moving on to my slide on blockchain, the first question that we all want to answer this morning, and of course, we don't have enough time to answer all the questions in relation to blockchain, but essentially, blockchain is a distributed ledger for storage and transfer. It's a digital filing system, a database used to store, track, and transfer data securely. And as we will get to later in our presentation, its main selling points are the fact that it offers data integrity, immutability, and identity authentication. And these are big words, but I'm sure as we go on, we will be able to unpack them more. Essentially, what makes the blockchain exciting is its ability to encrypt the information, the data that is presented through the chains, and thereby make them secure. There are different types of blockchains. There are what we call the centralized systems of blockchain. Those are not very well known among many users as the decentralized. So if you look at the literature, many of the literature normally will define blockchain as decentralized data storage system using the peer-to-peer network system to secure data. And the benefit of the blockchain is the fact that it's able to timestamp information and data that is fed into it, and thereby securely keep track of every progress that we make. And for us in dispute resolution and dispute avoidance, procedure is something that is often part of what we do. And let me say that the blockchain in itself is a digital filing system. So what's exciting about it? What makes it exciting is the fact that the technology can be made even more dynamic by the introduction of what we call smart contracts onto the blockchains. So what are these smart contracts? Smart contracts basically are self-executing computer programs and all computer codes. And these self-executing computer codes are able to take contractual terms that the parties have agreed on and ensure that the different activities are executed by using the logic of if-then, the if-then logic. If something happens, then something else happens. There is a debate as to whether smart contracts are contracts at all, or smart contracts are basically the technology. And for many in the industry, especially those on the technology side of things, the logic or the argument is that smart contracts are simply self-executing technology, full stop. However, when you talk to those who have legal leanings, they tend to argue that smart contracts are contracts in itself. And the English Law Commission has done some work on that. And clearly, the work has sought to define legal smart contracts and distinguish them from smart contracts generally. So the English Law Commission defines smart contracts in the legal sense as a legally binding contract in which some or all the contractual terms are defined in and or performed automatically by a computer program. So as you can see on your screens, the smart contracts offers very, very interesting prospects when it comes to dispute avoidance. The first area that we need to focus on in this presentation in terms of whether or not this technology can help reduce disputes is the fact that the technology can help the parties to start right. What do I mean by starting right? If the parties are able to agree on the terms of their contract, the technology can help the parties translate this into a computer language, which then stays on the smart contract arrangement and help them to transact that transaction without necessarily any human intervention. And as you can see on screen, the advantages, there are advantages and disadvantages. And I'm sure we will have time to go through some of the advantages later, but obviously potential for automation of some of the things that we do from day to day. And there is also the idea of immutability, identity authentication, data integrity, as I've spoken about. Finally, on my side of the presentation, let me introduce you to the two examples of real life activities which are ongoing in this field. The JAMS Smart Contract Protocol, which has taken or seized the opportunity to adapt some of the rules that we have in existing commercial arbitration and mediation to blockchain and smart contract activities. The other rule that I will mention briefly before I hand over to Charles are the UK Jurisdiction Task Force digital dispute resolution rules. And what is interesting about these rules are 2 points. The first one has to do with the fact that they have adopted the traditional dispute resolution rules for on-chain transaction dispute resolutions. But not just that, they utilize the technology to also foster the resolution process. And this makes the prospect of, if you like, process automation and facilitation of blockchains in the dispute resolution and avoidance a reality. Finally, 2 points, summary. In summary, I want us to have our mind on 2 things. The industry will change. Just as I said from the beginning, the industry is changing. And therefore, it's a question of whether we go ahead of it or we wait and be overtaken by events. And to that extent, we can develop rules which will help us resolve disputes which are emerging in the field on one hand, or develop rules which can help us to resolve the disputes which we receive more efficiently. And on that note, I hand over to Charles to take us through the mediation aspect. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joseph. And integrating blockchain technology and smart contract into traditional mediation practices brings a lot of fresh and innovative ways to sort out disputes. So let's look at how this works. It stands out because it's built on a decentralized ledger technology, which means that it keeps a clear and unchangeable record of all transactions. So what's great about this is it ensures fairness and remove any chance of meddling with the records. So now, when you throw smart contract into the mix, things get even better. Smart contract are like automatic agreements. They carry out on terms of the contract as soon as certain conditions are checked out. And these automations and surety that comes with smart contract cuts down on misunderstandings. It makes sorting out disputes faster and more straightforward. So using blockchains and smart contract for dispute resolution has lots of advantages. So we're talking about better transparency, stronger security, and more efficiency. By tapping into the blockchain and smart contract, mediations can become a much smoother and more effective process. To talk about how blockchain technology and smart contract can be used in mediation process, making them more efficient, transparent, and secure, we need to look at both the idea behind these technologies and how they are used in the real world. So we will look at what makes blockchains and smart contracts helpful for these improvements, the challenges we might face in using them in mediations, and some ways to solve these problems. So mediation is a key part of solving disputes. It's one of the most predominant methods for dispute resolution, providing a way to sort things out less confrontational than going to the court to litigations. Now, with the introduction of blockchain technology and smart contracts, there is a chance to really change how mediation works for the better. These technology can make the whole process more efficient, transparent, and secure. So I will explain how blockchain and smart contract could revolutionize mediations. So we look into the challenges that might come up. We try to blend these technology with mediations. So in talking about how mediation works, there are mainly two types of people's use, facilitative and evaluative. So in the facilitative mediations, the mediator helps everyone involved figure out what they really want and look for ways to solve their issues. They do this without giving their own take on the situation. On the other hand, evaluative mediations is a bit different. Here, the mediator is more hands-on, giving their views on what's stronger or weak about each party's stance. So blockchain technology and smart contracts can greatly enhance both types of mediations. They offer safe and unchangeable records of keeping track of mediations, discussions, and decisions, and which means that all the shared information and reached agreements are opened and secured from tampering, which is especially helpful in evaluative mediations. Since in this style, the mediator's evaluations and suggestions are documented word for word, which ensure the process is fair and open. So blockchain technology isn't just about digital currency. It also changed how we choose mediators. Imagine having a decentralized list right on the blockchain, filled with detailed into the mediators' qualifications, their experience, and what they're really good at. This way, anyone needing a mediator can make a well-informed choice, which makes the whole process more open and cut down the usual time and effort needed to pick the right mediator. Think of it like this: when we are going through mediations, using blockchain and smart contract can really make things easier and faster. It's like having an automatic helper that takes care of the boring stuff for us, like setting up the meetings and keeping track of all the paperwork. But what's really cool about smart contract is that they can actually understand the rules of our agreement. Once everything that we have agreed on happens, these contracts just go ahead and do what they're really supposed to do, all by themselves. This isn't just about making things quicker, it's also about making sure everything is fair and square. By letting the technology handle it, we cut down on mistakes and make sure nobody's bias is messing with the outcome. So in the end, everyone gets a fair deal and it's all wrapped up more smoothly. So blockchain and smart contract have made a huge impact on mediations by making things a lot more secure and transparent. The thing about blockchain isn't just unchangeable. So once something is put on out there, you can't change it. So which gives us a clear and secure record of all the chats, offers, and deals that have been made. It's really important for keeping mediation process honest and keeping all the shared information confidential. So smart contract brings in an extra level of security through automation and then how agreements are enforced. They carry out on actions automatically based on what's been agreed beforehand, making sure everyone sticks to the terms. So which lower the chance of people not following through and the issues that can come up after trying to sort things out. And So even though there are some really clear benefits, bringing blockchain and smart contract into the mediation process isn't straightforward. There are a few big obstacles, like the legal questions that smart contract raise, worries about the privacy, and just how complex blockchain technology is. So to tackle these kind of legal uncertainties, it's essential to create a clear legal framework and guidelines. These will help to clarify the role of smart contract into the legal system to reduce the hesitations and the resistance towards adopting new technologies. Educational and awareness programs can play a very significant role here. Additionally, privacy worries can be managed by using advanced encryption methods and ensuring adherence to data protection laws. So we need to put money into our system and training, because some technical challenges, if we make blockchain applications easier to use and teach the mediators and the parties involved how to use them, it will really help to solve these problems. Also, it's really important to keep researching and developing or make blockchain technology faster and able to handle more. So playing blockchain technology and smart contract in the world of mediations is really exciting, but it is not without its challenge. The good news is the benefits are huge. We are talking about making things clear for everyone, sorting out the dispute faster, saving money, making sure the access is easier for people, and beefing up security. To get all of these hurdles, we need to work together, the lawmakers, academics, tech folks, and everyday user. We can tackle these issues with clear legal rules, better education, supporting skills, and tech development. So strong privacy protections and making sure we can make things more smoothly for the mediations. Despite these challenges, if we can really get the grips of the technology, it could really change the way that we handle mediations in a big way. And if you're interested into these, how to incorporate blockchain smart contract into the mediation process, actually, Joseph and I have written a paper recently, which has been published. If you want an engaged copy, feel free to contact me. Thank you so much for your time. Let me pass it to David. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. And I will now pick up on construction adjudication, which is one of the newer kids on the block in terms of alternative dispute resolution. So I thought it'd be worth just sketching out very briefly the conceptual framework for construction adjudication as it exists both in the UK and internationally, because I think many of the issues arising with the use of the technology need to be understood in the context of that conceptual framework. In the early 1990s in the UK, there were problems in the UK construction industry with cash flow, which was leading to a significant number of insolvencies, and work was done to try and work out how to resolve those issues. And that ended up with essentially a double-sided solution to the problem through the use of payment security mechanisms and the use of construction adjudication, the two being complementary streams of legal framework to try and ensure that cash flow succeeds in the UK construction industry. And that's based on an old phrase by a judge in the 1970s, Lord Denning, that cash flow is the very lifeblood of the enterprise when it comes to construction industry disputes. This model has then been picked up internationally, including in Malaysia. So the 1996 Act on the slide was the foundational text for the UK construction and payment security legislation. And we see in Malaysia the Construction Industry Payment and Adjudication Act of 2012. In terms of the conceptual model, they are broadly similar. There are tweaks. I think Malaysia has learned from some of the experience in the UK and adapted accordingly. But basically, the system is broadly the same. Some of the timescales have changed and some of the detail has changed. In terms of technology, what's quite interesting about these processes is that they were conceived in the early 1990s originally, really before technology started to operate in dispute resolution. But by the time the legislation had been passed and come into force, email was becoming the main technology used in legal practice. And I do think that one of the reasons why this mechanism has been successful was because it provided an early adoption of the then rising technology of email, because you saw for the first time a process that relies entirely on fast transfer information suddenly having a technology that allowed for the fast transfer information. That was inadvertent. And what I'm slightly worried about with construction adjudication, smart contracts, and blockchain is that the technology may now be moving beyond what adjudication is capable of, and I'll touch on that in a few minutes. In terms of how the system works, payment security is really the key, making sure that people get paid when they should get paid. That's achieved through a system of notices by providing transparency and allowing the parties to understand what they're going to get paid and when. And if they're not going to get paid what they think they're going to get paid, they're told that as soon as possible. So steps can be taken to resolve any issues that arise. That happens then through a series of gateways, through a payment process, and the ensuring of interim payments. The position, as I understand it, in Malaysia is slightly less complicated than it is in the UK, but there is still this basic idea of having transparency and allowing parties to work out what they're getting paid and when and what the problems are. That's then complemented by a form of fast-track dispute resolution known as construction adjudication, found in the same legislation in the UK, well, as it is the payment security in the UK and in Malaysia. It's fast track. In the UK, the process takes 28 days. It's somewhat longer in Malaysia. I think it can be around double that, around 55 days, depending on some of the nips and tucks in the process. But essentially, compared to other forms of ADR, that is really fast, even compared to mediation, which is almost a one-stop shop. The trouble then is that there can be questions about the quality of the result given, because some of the disputes can be extremely complicated, and there's an idea that it's rough justice. That is something that the courts in the UK and other adopters of the system around the world have accepted. It's the trade-off that they make in order to ensure that cash flows around the construction industry. The basic procedure itself is somewhere between arbitration and expert determination. It puts some onus on the adjudicator to decide and govern the process. They have a somewhat inquisitorial rule. The procedure can be quite flexible, but because of the payment security legislation, there are constraints on it. And in the UK, and I'm afraid I don't know about the position in Malaysia, there are boundaries through the rules of natural justice, which weren't in the original legislation, but which the courts have said apply to adjudications. And they're there to ensure basic fundamentals of fairness in the process, essentially by ensuring that adjudicators are impartial and unbiased, and by ensuring that parties have the opportunity to comment and respond to each other's arguments. That'd be the next slide, please. And so that then takes us to how blockchain and smart contracts will work in the construction adjudication sphere. Many of the benefits that Charles outlined in terms of mediation will also apply to construction adjudication, but in fact, even more so, because mediation is essentially a consensual process, whereas adjudication is adversarial. So the benefits of transparency, speed, and efficiency, which are brought to mediation, will also work in adjudication to an even greater success. So where questions about mediator selection, needing to be able to check into the background of mediators and understand that there are no or transparency as to their previous ties with the contractors and the parties will help ensure that questions around bias are resolved and there's transparency around that. Again, as email was in terms of transfer of information in the early days of adjudication, the blockchain ability to hold evidence and allow it to be transferred quickly will be very valuable in the ultra fast form of dispute resolution, which is construction adjudication. One of my concerns on that would be that because this is a very contentious position, by recording all information, you then provide even more information for parties to crawl through to see if there are areas where they want to challenge or quibble about a decision. So one of the problems is that there is information there, but more information is not always better in terms of making sure the position is robust. It might provide a party who wishes to be disputatious more material to really take out of context after the event and use to challenge a decision. I'm relatively unconcerned about that in terms of the approach of the UK judiciary. We've always been very robust in supporting the adjudicator and supporting the adjudication process, but they would need to be comfortable with what the blockchain and smart contract mechanisms were doing with that information so they really understand what it is and how it works, so they don't see it as being new and too scary and not making their same robust decisions as they currently do. With the payment cycle, Joseph and I have written on that and the interaction with smart contracts. There are great opportunities in terms of construction payment about using smart contracts to help move payment around a construction supply chain. The difficulty is that you have what now may become an obsolete system of notices and gateways, which essentially put into paper what the smart contract can do automatically, and the extent to which that paper trail, whether it's electronic paper or not, can hold up payment because it's otherwise able to do automatically. Finally, if you use smart contracts to automate enforcement or to enhance the enforcement of adjudication mechanisms, there are issues with the way the case law works in the UK. At the moment, there's been a debate for the last few years about the use of smash and grab notifications, where essentially adjudications are used to enforce the payment process by saying that if some of the gateways are missed, then payment should be made, whether or not that payment is due. That's okay in the current situation where the payment isn't automated, but if there is automation of payment, the cash flow could start flowing in a way that is not necessarily foreseen, especially in a situation where one of the parties might become insolvent. And there is also rules around from the UK Supreme Court in the case of Bresco about the extent to which parties need to provide payment security, how those wrinkles, which were from the pre-smart contract age, deal with or respond to the use of smart contracts and automation of payment is something I think that needs to be considered carefully, and I think probably will require some degree of tweaking of the underlying legislation in order to make it work. At the same time, the use of smart contracts, in particular to automate payment processes to ensure transparency of information, should be very important in the overall goal of this legislation in ensuring cash flow flows around the construction industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of the three panelists. It was really a tour de force of blockchain technology, smart contract mediation, construction adjudication overview in the UK and in Malaysia. It really is important to note that these brief presentations, they're due to years of research and practice. So it's very hard to reduce these years of research into a couple of minutes of presentation. So those members of the audience who are interested to look deeper into the points that were mentioned, do please reach out to our panelists and request their research papers. With that, I see that we've got now plenty of time for the questions. And if I may, in my role as the moderator, I'd like to ask a couple of questions to Joseph, who was the first panelist and set out the scene for the entire discussion. And it's a bit of a general question that I have. Smart contracts, based on Joseph's presentation and research, do facilitate the automation and the reduction of human intervention in various industries, in particular with our focus on dispute resolution. Now, how does that automation and reduction of human intervention reconcile with the inherently human nature of dispute resolution procedures? And I'll explain. At times, and I'm sure you would agree, ventilating the parties' positions helps crystallize the dispute, helps identify what actually matters to the parties. Where is the zone of possible agreement? And at times, what actually matters can be inherently human and irrational. Smart contracts-based dispute resolution is designed to remove all that from the dispute resolution mechanism. Now, Joseph, is that really a desired part for resolving disputes?
Thank you very much, Olga. That's an excellent question when it comes to smart contracts and blockchain technology. And I want to draw attention to our title. If you look at the title of the presentation, it says blockchain and smart contracts, a game changer for dispute resolution. It's a question. And what that means is that we are putting forward the advantages of this technology, but we are also flagging the challenges which these technologies will bring up. And like any technology, they will have challenges. The question is how we go about the challenges. And for traditional industries like ours, where people are quite conservative in terms of giving up their roles for technology to take over, the selling point of these technologies is not that they replace the dispute resolver. The selling point of these technologies is that they facilitate what the resolver does. And so it is entirely possible for the resolver to allow conversations to take place outside the blockchain and ensure that only conversations that they want, if you like, straight record of to go onto the blockchain. And that is entirely possible. So it's not a question of machines taking over everything we do. It's a question of machines facilitating what we do. And so some of those difficulties, I think, would definitely be within the power of the dispute resolver to manage. Thank you very much.
Joseph, I know there's quite a number of questions coming through in Q&A. And before we get to that, very briefly, and then we'll move on to Charles and David. Very briefly, blockchain technology does use encryption and various options that allow for cryptographic functionality of data. With that, one of the main selling points for blockchain-based, smart contract-based dispute resolution is data integrity and identity authentication, allowing to clearly identify participants in the process and what data is being fed and protect that data. So how do these main features of blockchain technology, the use of encryption, for example, feature into this main selling point of data integrity?
Thank you very much. And very briefly again, Olga, thank you for the question. When I think about this question, I can't but venture slightly into the technical dimension of blockchains. The blockchain uses what we call the hash function. And just for our purposes, I'm assuming that it's not everyone here who has an understanding of the technical bit. Imagine the block in a blockchain as a cell in an Excel spreadsheet, which contains information. When that cell is filled with information, that information imputed is encrypted and given a specific unique passcode. And that passcode is called hash. And that hash is integrated essentially it locks that information and allows only the one who has the key to that information to go in. But what is interesting is that the blocks as created are chained, technologically changed. And what it means is that the encryption created for one block becomes part of the encryption used as a passcode for another and for another. So if you want to change the information in a block, you cannot do so until you change all the passcodes. And this is just my way of explaining it in a basic way how the encryption works. But essentially, look at your WhatsApp messages. They are end-to-end encrypted. And what it means is that once they are encrypted, it's difficult for individuals to tamper with them. And that is how the blockchain secures our information, just briefly.
Thank you very much, Joseph. That definitely gives food for thought, in particular when that is compared to data integrity when we deal with old-fashioned, old-school arbitrations where the tribunal members usually operate out of Gmail-based email accounts and receive data from the parties on those accounts and how that data is protected. And before we move on to Charles, one last question. I think it's valuable because here in Asia, it's important to see how the UK also on a statutory basis deals with these rather technologically advanced issues. You mentioned in your presentation the digital dispute resolution rules by the UK Jurisdiction Task Force. Just very briefly for us to understand, what are the key features of these rules?
Thank you very much. And again, as I mentioned, in 2001, flowing with the trend that technology is taking, the UK Jurisdiction Task Force put together rules which provide a framework for expeditious resolution of legal disputes arising from blockchains, smart contracts, and other digital relationships. So here, the rule is looking at an industry and saying, hang on, as dispute resolvers, there is an opportunity. There are a lot of disputes coming up when you look at cryptocurrency, financial transactions on the block, and digital transactions. And so these rules provide a swift resolution mechanisms which allow arbitrators and experts trained in that field to engage and take advantage of resolving disputes in that area. But a key elements of these rules, too, very quickly, is the on-chain implementation of decisions. So for instance, when arbitrators arrive at a decision, there is a mechanism which allows their decision to be implemented on-chain. On-chain simply means digitally. So the parties remove human intervention and they are able to enforce the decisions digitally. The other element is the optional anonymity for parties. So parties can choose to be anonymized, or parties can choose to be known as they use that facility. And finally, they have what we call automatic dispute resolution processes. And that allows for automatic selection of a panel, a person, or an artificial intelligence agent to resolve disputes and implement the outcome. So these rules are worth looking at in terms of the standards emerging in the field. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Joseph. I see there's quite a number of questions there that we can take from the panel later on. But now moving on to Charles. Charles, in your presentation, you spoke about the efficiency and transparency and the security of mediation processes that are based on blockchain technology. Now, maybe building up a bit on that, what specific features of this blockchain technology and smart contract-based dispute resolution contribute to such important elements of dispute resolution as efficiency, transparency, and security?
Thank you so much for the questions, Olga. So actually, blockchain technology and smart contract can significantly enhance the efficiency, transparency, and security of mediation process, as mentioned. Regarding to the efficiency, blockchain technology, which streamlines the mediator's selections by maintaining a decentralized database for certified mediators. So this technology can enable the automatic selections from the parties based on the predefined characteristics, reducing the time and efforts involved in mediator selections. Smart contract further argument efficiency by encoding terms and conditions of mediations, triggering subsequent steps automatically upon the completions of agreed upon actions. So regarding to transparency, blockchain provides a mutable and transparent record for all mediations proceedings, including the communication between the parties and the mediators, proposed settlement, and the final agreement, which ensure that every action is traceable and verifiable, fostering the trust in the mediation process. Smart contract, on the other hand, contribute to this by records to mediators, ensuring an objective and transparent evaluations of the parties' positions. Regarding the security, the secure natures of blockchain ensure that records of mediation proceedings are tamper-proof, enhancing the security of the process. In addition, smart contract can securely hold the dispute funds in an escrow and release them only upon the fulfillment of agreed terms, reducing the potential of the fraud or error. I hope I can answer your questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Charles. Another question that I had, and obviously, despite these improvements, there are quite a number of challenges with integrating blockchain technology into dispute resolution, particularly in mediation. And there's a question that's inspired by Rajasekaran Murugesan's question here in the chat box. There's always, or oftentimes, there's ambiguity of contractual interpretation. There are potentially different clashing views on how a particular contract needs to be interpreted. And the parties do have different views on that with various support and in legal authority. Now, the question is, from Rajasekaran, how do smart contracts actually help with that? How do you create a computer code that helps determine, without hearing the parties' positions, what contractual interpretation is correct?
Actually, that's a really good question. And smart actually, as mentioned, smart contract is can help us a lot in the mediation process. And although there actually are some challenges of blockchain basis of smart contract, and one of the most prevalent challenges is the legal ambiguity surrounding the smart contract. In numerous countries, the legal standing of smart contract is not fully defined, which can pose significant problems for their use in mediations. For example, if a dispute arises in the executions of smart contract, it is uncertain how a court could handle it, given the lack of established legal framework and precedent. So on these issues, the work done by the English Law Commissions is illuminating, which it attempts to bring some clarity to the questions by distinguishing smart contract from smart legal contract. The latter will be regarded without questions as a legal contract. They will be expected to meet the basic requirements of valid contract under the English law. In other words, parties using blockchain and smart contract technology to resolve disputes must know that the process will carry legal implications. The enforceability of smart contract agreements also becoming issues in jurisdictions where the legal status of smart contracts is unclear. But this uncertainty can deter the parties from choosing to use smart contract in mediations because they may fear the potential legal complexity that it brings. And in order to solve this kind of problems on the issues of smart contract, it's really crucial that the legislations or the regulations clearly define the legal standing of smart contract, which can involve comprehensive legal framework that recognize and enforce this digital contract. The work of the English Law Commissions on this is a first step. English law has taken the stance of the current law could be adopted by these technological innovations. So, which can also the conviction that the common law by nature will incrementally develop rules in this new area. An example of such adoptions can be seen as electronic transactions through email or website. While the country that they do not follow the common law may find some wisdom from this approach, many of which align with the civil law traditions may prefer clear codifications of rules on this subject. Furthermore, law can also provide guidelines on the use of interpretations of smart contract, which can in turn provide parties technology. And actually, I saw one question which, from the chat box saying that if terms of the ambiguity in contract terms, how smart contract help us? Basically, smart contract can significantly reduce ambiguity in contract terms through their inherent characteristics of automatations and precisions. By encoding the contractual agreements into the self-executing code on the blockchain, smart contract ensure that all terms are explicitly defined and automatically enforced without need for intermediaries. So this digital format minimizes the scope of interpretations and dispute, as the code dictates the execution of the contractual obligations based on the predefined conditions made by the parties. Consequently, the clarity and the transparency afforded by smart contract contribute to reducing misunderstanding and enhancing the certainty of contractual relationships. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. And mindful of the time, I do still see that we have a couple of minutes left. But I'd like to pick up on a question in the chat box by Jamil Al-Akra, even though it's marked as answered. But it's an interesting additional point to what you just said, Charles, about the solutions on the various interpretations of smart contracts, including statutory solutions. Jamil suggests that there may be situations where the parties disagree on the interpretation or performance of the smart contract, or where the smart contract itself contains bugs or vulnerabilities that affect its functionality. So when that happens, what does that mean for dispute resolution mechanism? And is there any proposed solution to deal with that?
So let me start from the traditional point of view. For the traditional dispute resolution process, such as litigations or arbitrations, may not be fully equipped to address the unique challenges presented by smart contract. For example, the decentralized and immutable nature of blockchain technology is complicated to applications of conventional legal principles and jurisdictional issues. Moreover, the technical complexity of smart contract requires specialized knowledge to interpret and rectify issues, which may be beyond the expertise of the traditional legal practitioners. But in order to address these kind of challenges, dispute resolution mechanism for smart contract must evolve. Potential solutions include development a specialized arbitration tribunal with expertise in blockchain and smart contract technologies, and the incorporation of dispute resolution protocol directly within the smart contract code, and the establishment of a decentralized autonomous organizations to oversee the dispute resolution in this regard. So these kind of mechanisms can provide a fair, efficient, and enforceable means to resolving disputes that arise from smart contracts, ensuring that their reliability and the confidence of their users. In a nutshell, the advance of smart contract requires evaluations and adoptions of a dispute resolution framework to cater to the technological and the legal complexities inherent in these agreements. So the goal is to create a harmonious balance between technological innovations and legal certainty. I hope I can answer the general questions.
Thank you very much, Charles. It's certainly a challenging question with a number of potential solutions, but recognizing Malaysia's leading space in construction adjudication, I do wish to get back to David on his construction adjudication presentation. I do have a couple of questions for David as well. David, how will blockchain and smart contracts change construction adjudication practice? And how might that change bring about differences in how dispute resolution participants experience mediation?
Thanks, Olga. And I'll try and sort of pick up some of the themes I've seen in the questions as well in terms of that. I think one of the questions about how it will change the process depends a bit on how you imagine the smart contract and the blockchain to be operating within the process. And early in the talk, when Joseph talked about one of the key tensions, which has been looked at by the Law Commission of England and Wales too, is the smart contract a tool used within the dispute resolution process as other tools currently are, which are technological, or is it something that is actually deep within the contract, the parties' agreement itself? So I suppose one of the things the questions are bringing out is if people don't agree on what these terms are and how they work, then they're not part of the parties' agreement. So they're not really conceptually contractual. They're actually a tool that's being used, and that will have the same flaws and problems that any tool is used, especially in its early development. Which isn't necessarily the question you asked, but I think it's important to see that as in its context. So in terms of the way that it will work in adjudication, it will be a tool to help the parties. It will not replace the role of the adjudicator in the short term. There are ways in which the blockchain can be used to help dispute resolution. It can be a new form of dispute resolution, and it may be that when we look at the rules by which adjudication works, we can harness some of those abilities. You know, the use of juries, an anonymity can be done, issues can be parceled out, and so on. So I think conceptually, to think of it as a tool and part of the process rather than replacing key aspects of the process. In terms of the structure of dispute resolution, I think what will start to happen is a change in the way it operates, I suspect. At the moment, adversarial dispute resolution works a bit like a tennis match, and it follows the model that it followed in the 1920s, as Joseph mentioned, where somebody wrote something down and sent it to the other side, and they read it and replied to it. Or if they were the adjudicator, they read it and made a decision about it, and then they published the decision. And all that's happened so far with technology is that process is sped up. So things are written down and sent much more quickly than they were in the 1920s, but they're still transmitted at that point. What you see increasingly with with the advent of cloud computing, the ability to work collaboratively online, has meant that the structure of that transaction changes. It isn't necessarily one side does something, the other side responds. Things can happen more contemporaneously. The security and the immutability of the blockchain increase that transparency. They allow things to happen much more synchronously. And I think that will be something that will change, because parties will want to get the information more quickly, and they'll want to be able to input the information more quickly and directly. As the adjudicator goes through the information, he could be typing questions on it and they could be answered immediately, and you could tell that they've been answered immediately, and you can see who's answered and you can see what they've said and so on. So that changes the notion of the process. The impact of that on the idea of natural justice and allowing parties to be heard will be very important. But I suppose one of the questions, and again, a theme that comes through in the questions, is you have to be able to trust the process and define what you want it to do in a way that will work. So if it's a case of where the smart contract is operating, is defining the parameters of that operation. So there will be a benefit in payment if you define exactly when payment is going to be made, but that the parties have to agree that those are the circumstances in which payment is going to be made, and be happy with that, and be happy with the trade-off that is in terms of some of the wiggle room they might currently have to dispute it later. And that maybe that at this point, those agreements are limited to certain things. But the blockchain can manage the evidence. The blockchain could manage it, that you provide evidence of every brick that is laid, every steel beam that is installed, and a certain payment could be made for that, making micropayments, for example, easier to manage. And the other point is that people will still be involved in this, and I don't think it's a particular coincidence that one of the other areas that Joseph and I in particular have been focused on in our research is the idea of the relational contract, which looks at how contracts work within the parties' relationship. And I think we'll see those concepts come to the fore, because they are the soft, non-written down parts of the contract and the importance of those. And I think they will become more important as the key operational bits of the contract become automated. So the relationship and how the relationship managed is a different question, I think, from some of the technical points of blockchain. I've maybe not quite addressed the question directly, but I'm conscious of time, and I thought I'd try and pick up some of the themes from the questions too.
Thank you very much, David. That's been very useful, and actually a brilliant sort of concluding remark. Looking into the crystal ball of blockchain-based, smart contract-based dispute resolution, and what challenges they are and how they might be addressed, maybe on a legislative level, or whether existing legal framework is deficient and insufficient to address that, but also mindful of time. I see that some of the questions are actually being answered by Joseph in writing, and I do have a couple of seconds to basically just thank our panelists for setting out their years of research and their views for the future, looking out in crystal balls when it comes to such a complex area as blockchain-based dispute resolution. Thank you very much for your time. It's quite early in the UK. So very grateful. Also, thank you to the audience, very actively participating, asking questions and receiving answers. Do please feel free to reach out to the panelists if you require perhaps copies of their papers and their research. And without further ado, I'll let Jonathan conclude on behalf of the brilliant AADR team. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Olga Botenko, and all the honored speakers for the engaging sessions. Dear participants, we hope you enjoyed this webinar on blockchain and smart contracts, a game changer in mediation, and GameSun unique insights. Before we end, as everyone knows, continuous learning and professional development are essential in our industry. With that in mind, AIADR plans to organize workshops in the future to provide everyone with an opportunity to enhance their skills and exchange ideas. I'd like to highlight a few upcoming events that are pivotal to our advancement here at AIADR.
Firstly, we have a Zoom workshop scheduled on 8th of March from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., where our focus will be on the dispute resolution boards. Our distinguished speakers for this workshop will be Mr. Simon Longley and Mr. Adrian C. Joy Hong. I encourage each of you to actively participate, ask questions, and share your insights and experience. This workshop is designed to be interactive and engaging, so let's take this opportunity to make it a valuable experience for all involved. Moreover, from 27th April to 28th April, we will be hosting our inaugural AIADR and UNCG MYB Legal Sustainability Practitioner Training course, an occasion that marks a significant milestones in our journey towards dispute avoidance. This course aims to explore the dynamic of environmental, social, and governance (ESG) principles with the legal landscapes. It will allow participants to gain comprehensive insights into the evolving regulatory framework, sustainable business practices, and the legal implications of the ESG factors. Stay tuned to the AIADR social media and website for registration details. Finally, before we end, we would like to kindly invite the speakers and moderator for a short photography sections. Thank you so much. Okay, I will be counting down. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you so much. Hope everyone has a great weekend ahead.